The United States is the #1 consumer and producer of child abuse content. The Department of Homeland Security estimates that child trafficking has an annual global profit of $150 billion. Human trafficking has already passed the illegal arms trade and is going to pass the drug trade. About 2 million children are trafficked every year worldwide. That's how serious this is.
My Ace Boon Coons, what is up about that piece of information? Today's video will be on just that. Child trafficking globally and nationally. And as you can see, the United States is #1 on that list. Sadly, what are we doing about it? There is nothing more important in this world than the innocent, than the lives of these children. And what are we doing about it? Not enough. Today is January 13th, 2026. Happy New Year's, y'all. It's our first video since the new year. And we're going to mix it up. Beyond child trafficking, we are going to put up some other videos on current events. So y'all stay tuned and thank you for watching.
These children are not just kidnapped and in some cases bred by families as a cash crop. We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill them and have no one ask where they are. We're also importing children by the plane load. Again, children who have no documentation. It's not just child slavery or child sex abuse. It's also child torture, because you have adrenalized blood. You have the whole blood drinking ceremony of the satanic world. It's also the use of children for harvesting body organs. And then you have ritual ceremonies and ritual murder, as well as incidental murder.
This content is for educational and awareness purposes only. The views discussed reflect public claims, reports, and theories, and are not presented as confirmed facts. We are not attacking anyone or promoting hate, fear, lies, or misinformation.
These children are...
These are the countries with the most missing children. Pay close attention and check where your country appears on this list, because sometimes we scroll past headlines like this without really thinking, but the numbers are terrifying. Countries with the most missing children: Italy, 21,951 missing children each year. South Korea, 25,690 to missing children each year. Russia, 45,000 missing children each year. Canada, 45,288 missing children each year. India, 96,000 missing children each year. Germany, 100,000 missing children each year. United Kingdom, 1 in 12,035 missing children each year. United States, 460,000 missing children each year, with 2,300 children going missing every day. What do you think is actually causing all these disappearances? Are these kids running away? Or is something far more disturbing happening behind the scenes? Are they being kidnapped? Are they being trafficked? Are there secret groups operating in the shadows, using these children for things the world doesn't want to talk about? Why do so many cases never get solved? Why do some countries have higher numbers than others? And most importantly, why aren't we seeing global outrage on the same level as other issues? These are the countries with...
It is an honor to be here. I thank you for the invitation to share my testimony. My goal is to inspire action to safeguard the lives of migrant children, including the staggering 85,000 that are missing. Today, children will work overnight shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, restaurants to pay their debts to smugglers and traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sex. Today, children will call a hotline to report they are being abused, neglected, and trafficked, and we don't know if they're going to get the help they need. For nearly a decade, unaccompanied children have been suffering in the shadows, and I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS Office of Refugee Resettlement reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children. As for me, my interest is the safety of the children. I do not view this as a political issue. I view this as a humanitarian issue. I assure you, my motives are the highest and best. I want the children protected. So I want to tell you some of what I witnessed personally at the Pomona Fairplex. I saw vulnerable indigenous children from Guatemala who speak Mayan dialects and cannot speak Spanish. That means they cannot ask for help in English. They cannot ask for help in Spanish. They become captives of their sponsors. I have sat with case managers as they've cried to tell me the horror of what has happened to children as they make the journey to this country. I saw apartment buildings where 20, 30, and 40 unaccompanied minors have been released. I saw sponsors trying to simultaneously sponsor children from multiple ORR sites at one time. I saw sponsors using multiple addresses to obtain sponsorships of children. And I saw numerous cases of children in debt bondage, and the child knew they had to stay with the sponsor until the debt was paid. Realizing that we were not offering the children the American dream, but instead putting them in modern-day slavery with wicked overlords was a terrible revelation. A terrible revelation. These children are a captive victim population with no access to law enforcement or knowledge of their rights. They are extorted, abused, neglected, and that is why I blew the whistle in 2021. I witnessed firsthand the horrors of child trafficking and exploitation. My life will never be the same after what I saw, but I have hope because I'm counting on you. It's my hope that you'll take action to end this crisis, to safeguard the lives of these vulnerable children. People have asked me, what can be done? What would you suggest? Well, first, I think HHS's #1 priority is oversight. They must commit to oversight, transparency, and accountability. If I could wave a magic wand, this, I believe, could be quickly solved by experts in the IG community. There is a Pandemic Analytics Center of Excellence, or the PACE, as we call it. I believe if data analysts at the PACE could look at the data, children could be rescued, criminals could be prosecuted. If the PACE had access to this data, it shows where the children are and who has them. I think also we need to change the culture of speed over safety. Speed is the wrong performance measure when dealing with children. We need to revamp the vetting process of sponsors and have case managers who have investigative backgrounds, data analytics backgrounds, some certified fraud examiners. And I think we need to reimagine a system where the sponsor is the accountable party. Sponsors should be required to report to ORR. And lastly, stop retaliating against whistleblowers. Stop retaliating against the people who are trying to tell the truth to save the children. As it is written, a wise man listens to advice, while a fool continues in his folly, and HHS needs to be wise to care for these children.
Thank you very much.
And check this out. This was just yesterday, January 12th, 2026, in Alabama. You don't hear this on the news. Again, why is it we don't take missing children serious enough?
Major breaking news out of Alabama. A child trafficking underground bunker in Bibb County, Alabama, was just raided last night. They arrested several people and they saved 10 children. These children were on the farm of the Terrells. There was 4 Terrells involved, both male and female, and there was other men and women that were arrested that were clients, that were basically coming over, checking these kids out and putting them back in when they were done. These kids ranged from 3 to 12 years old. There was 10 of them. The charges on these people are, I don't want to say them on here, but the smallest charges on there are rape and sodomy. Folks, we have an epidemic in this country, and we must stand united against it. Major breaking news out of Alabama.
54 boys and girls aged 11 to 18 were ushered in for what had been billed as a sex party. They were given candy and drinks and told to wait in this small room.
This little 11-year-old boy, I remember, he asked one of my operatives if they could give him some cocaine or something. He said, they usually give me something because I'm really scared.
By the time the deal was done, the alleged traffickers were set to make $25,000. That transaction was never completed. 25 Colombian special operatives stormed the party, arresting 5 suspects, 4 men and 1 former beauty queen, all charged with child trafficking. The victims, 29 of whom are under 18, were evacuated, given medical exams, and placed in a rehabilitation center where specialists are working to undo the damage.
Right before I got in the boat, we had to walk by this room where the kids were, and they put their hand up. And I touched their hand and see that there's liberation now.
Liberating one child at a time. Elaine Quijano, 54 boys and girls aged 11 to 18 were ushered in for what had been billed as a sex party.
America's darkest secret. Over the last 2 years, this country has become an international hub for child trafficking, and the U.S. government is behind it. Under Biden, hundreds of thousands of children have come into this country illegally. And once they get here, most are sold for sex, used for cheap labor, or are forced to join gangs. Nobody deserves this, especially not children. Congress called a whistleblower to testify at Capitol Hill today. Listen.
Today, children will work overnight shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, restaurants to pay their debts to smugglers and traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sex. Today, children will call a hotline to report they are being abused, neglected, and trafficked. And we don't know if they're going to get the help they need. For nearly a decade, unaccompanied children have been suffering in the shadows.
Carolee Rodas volunteered at the HHS to help kids. But when she got there, she found out they were doing the exact opposite.
I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. It could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Joe Biden turned the federal government into the middleman for a child trafficking ring. Your tax dollars are paying for the last leg of the journey where we deliver migrant kids from the border to the hands of their abusers. Biden has tripled the supply of migrant children for the cartels to sell and abuse. Immigration expert Jessica Vaughn also testified.
Under the Biden policies, the annual number of UACs referred to HHS custody after crossing illegally has tripled from an average of 40,000 a year to more than 120,000 in each of the last 2 years. Half of the 600,000 unaccompanied minors who've been released in the country since 2012 have arrived on Biden's watch. Not only did he relax border controls and suppress immigration enforcement inside the country, when the numbers predictably exploded, his officials responded by gutting what few meager protections for child migrants still existed.
Biden tells the whole world our border is open. His policies incentivize kids to show up alone. But once they get here, the feds ship them off to adults who the kids might not even know, criminals, perverts, or cartel associates who force the terrified children to work until they pay off their debt. Biden knows this. It's been well documented, but he just shrugs it off.
But what is most infuriating is that even with all the well-documented risks and problems associated with the federal government taking custody of minors and adults claiming to be minors who are smuggled in and then releasing them to unvetted sponsors and then washing its hands of responsibility for them, even knowing the risks, still the Biden administration chose to throw gasoline on that dumpster fire by actually expanding opportunities for the illegal smuggling of minors into the country and expanding opportunities for these minors to be trafficked for cheap labor, commercial sex, gangs, and more.
Remember when AOC flew down to the border for a photo op? That was back when Trump was president, and she said that Trump was tearing families apart. I noticed AOC hasn't been crying in front of the border or any of the slaughterhouses or the child sex brothels. Where is she? Are her white pants maybe at the dry cleaner? Because the children are no longer politically useful to her, she abandons them, just like the ones the cartels abandon in the desert.
¿Qué pasó? Es que yo venía con un grupo de personas y me dejaron botar y no sé dónde están. No sabes dónde están. ¿Te dejaron solo? Pues claro, me dejaron botado. ¿Te dejaron solo botado? Solo. ¿No vienes con mami o con papi o con nadie? ¿Ah? ¿Vienes con tu mamá o tu papá? Nadie. Yo venía en un grupo que venía de entrega con usted y al final me dejaron botado y venía aquí a pedir auxilio.
This isn't an accident. The New York Times caught HHS Secretary Javier Becerra saying the quiet part out loud. The Biden administration created a conveyor belt of illegal child labor.
If Henry Ford had seen this in his plans, he would have never become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line. And kids aren't widgets, I get it. But we could do far better than this.
They don't care who the kids end up with. They just want to pump as many children through the system as they can. And this is what happens when you treat children like car parts on an assembly line.
A 20-plus-year-old man sponsored what we believed was his sister, who was only 16 years old. He submitted a birth certificate for himself and her as brother and sister. And then, about 10 days after she's released, we see she's for sale on his WhatsApp page.
Biden lured these children to America and then put them in the hands of criminals, and you paid for it.
Realizing that we were not offering the children the American dream, but instead putting them in modern-day slavery with wicked overlords was a terrible revelation. A terrible revelation.
Tara Lee Rodas is a hero. She didn't have to blow the whistle. She did it because she has a heart. But after she went public, her bosses tried to shut her up.
Stop retaliating against whistleblowers. Stop retaliating against the people who are trying to tell the truth to save the children. They threatened me with investigation. They walked me off the emergency intake site and they took my badge. It's a terrible thing when you blow the whistle and to try to save children, and then you are retaliated against for trying to help. HHS did everything they could to keep all of this silent.
Shameful. They opened our border, became knowingly complacent in trafficking children, and then tried to shut up the brave whistleblower.
Now, this story is insane. Right here in America, someone who was so-called doing the Lord's work. Y'all listen up. Insane.
Between 1924 and 1950, Georgia Tan kidnapped more than 5,000 newborn infants and then sold them to the ultra-wealthy on a nationwide black market child trafficking network. More than 500 of those infants would die before being sold due to abuse, neglect, disease, and malnutrition. Some of the babies were ripped from their mother's arms right off the streets in broad daylight. They were kidnapped from churches and daycare centers where they may have been playing. In most cases, the infants were taken directly from hospitals after doctors handed newborns over to people they thought were nurses, but they were actually criminals disguised as nurses, all part of a massive black market that sold babies. High-ranking politicians ensured Georgia Tan was protected so that she could continue selling infants to the highest bidder. And as unbelievable as all of this sounds, it is 100% true. Check this shit out.
Tan pulled off her brazen scheme through operating the Tennessee Children's Home Society, a society which, on the surface, was doing the Lord's work, finding homes for orphaned children. In reality, it worked as a cover for Tan to funnel children into her care, only for her to turn around and sell them on the black market for extreme profit. In the nearly 30 years Tan and the society were in operation, she managed to kidnap and sell an estimated 5,000 babies. These weren't orphaned children placed under her care. They were stolen right from under their parents' noses. How? How could anyone get away with kidnapping and selling children for nearly 30 years right here in America? She did it with help from friends in high places. She took children who came from poor families, for the simple reason that poor families at the time didn't have the necessary resources to search for one of their children should they go missing. If families did file a report, Georgia Tan would have it handled by her close friend E.H. Crump, a powerful tycoon and the so-called boss of Memphis. Crump would make sure the reports of missing children were ignored. She also had an elaborate system for taking newborn babies from hospitals and mental wards, bribing doctors and nurses to help protect the children, and then tell their unsuspecting parents that their baby was stillborn. Tan would take off with the baby, with the child's parents believing their newborn to be deceased. She even had a system for snatching children right off the street. She took children from churches or daycare centers while they played with their friends. They'd end up in the arms of a uniformed social worker under Tan's employ, and they'd never be seen by their birth parents again. Once the children were under her care, and their parents were none the wiser, Tan would wipe their identities and sell them to couples looking to adopt, leaving them completely in the dark about where the child came from by falsifying or destroying their documents. Tan pocketed millions of dollars selling children to out-of-state couples, charging a $5,000 premium on out-of-state adoptions. Almost 90% of her sales, which in this context, sales is a truly disgusting word, went to wealthy couples in New York and Los Angeles who could afford the steep pricing of Tan's services, including actress Joan Crawford, who adopted her twin daughters from Tan. It should be noted none of the adoptive parents had any chance to suspect what they were doing was wrong. On its face, Tan's operation was a legitimate adoption agency. Of course, simply adopting a baby and then never having questions about where that child came from isn't possible. But if the adoptive parents ever questioned Tan about issues that arose, things like missing birth certificates or clearly falsified medical histories, Tan had an answer. If the new parents ever had any suspicion that anything fishy was going on, Tan would threaten them with legal action through one of her major accomplices, family court judge Camille Kelly. Judge Kelly used her position of power to sanction Tan's activities and threaten the adoptive parents with taking away their adoptive children if they continued to make a fuss or ask questions. They would also be threatened with being roped into whatever legal ramifications Tan may or may not have faced. I mean, they did use her services, so technically they were involved in an illegal enterprise themselves. And here was a judge telling them they were complicit. Needless to say, this blackmail coming from the US judicial system itself made a lot of folks go quiet.
Between 19...
Come on, y'all, let's get serious. Please share, do your research, and do your part to protect these children. The least we could do is share this information. That is the very least. I, for instance, am on the verge of starting a task force and take these matters into my own hands. This deserves some street justice.
I mean, this is completely atrocious in a day and age where we're starting to wake up to the realities of sex trafficking and what's going on with these kids. They let all these kids in. We still don't know where over 300,000 of these kids are. And you're sitting here testifying saying that they gave a hotline for these kids to report if they were okay, if they needed anything, and 65,000 calls went unanswered. Do you know how many staffers the administration assigned to answering these phones and helping these kids?
One.
One staffer? Any idea how many hours a day this staffer was working?
No.
Maybe that's why there were 65,000 calls that weren't answered from these little kids, huh? Unbelievable. Thank you. I yield back.
I get briefed by my team sometimes 2 or 3 times a week on this situation with the unaccompanied migrant kids and where we stand. I've never heard that number of 85,000. I don't know where it comes from. Okay. Okay. And so I can't attest. I would say it doesn't sound at all to be realistic. And what we do is we try to follow up as best we can with these kids. Congress has given us certain authorities. Our authorities essentially end the moment we have found a suitable sponsor to place that child with. We try to do some follow-up, but neither the child or the sponsor is actually obligated to follow up with us. And we make every effort to follow up with them as best we can.
Tell me this, please. Can you give a breakdown of how many full-time employees are at their desk in one of these buildings every day?
Senator, when you take a look at the workforce at HHS, and we're close to 90,000 throughout the country, and working in various parts of the country, some here in headquarters. By the way, headquarters, we have an underground.
I got limited time, so this may be misleading. So tell me, what percent of the employees are at their desk, full-time employees are at the desk on any given day? And I don't mean to be rude, it's just a limited time.
No, and I appreciate that. And our folks are working full-time.
No, but how many are at their desk as opposed to being at home or someplace else, a coffee shop or whatever?
What we make sure we care about is that they're performing and they're delivering, and that's why...
Well, that's not really answering my question, because I know the best practices now in many industries is to bring people back in.
I get briefed by my team sometimes 2 or 3 times a week on this situation.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. We're doing the best we can, he said. My ass. It's so hard for these people to answer these simple questions. I think the answer to that senator's question is one. I think they have one person working a desk answering the calls for missing children. I could be wrong, but that's what I've heard. Dude, Venezuela, oil, fucking World War III, the economy, immigration, none of that matters more than these children. And we don't do shit about it. Nothing. Prepare for part 2. Prepare for justice. God is great. I'm going to leave y'all with that. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Catch you on the next one.